Well, partner, we're back for another episode of our podcast. I call it In the Box. You may have another name for it now.
Well, it's in the box.
You still like that?
Yeah, I still like it. I like it. It sticks, and people who talk to us about the program say, "Hey, I like the name."
Exactly. And what we try to do is give our listeners, some people from not only the police department but from our community, about things that we're doing, things that we have experienced through our police department and throughout the community. But we got a special one today,
We do, and I'm glad that he agreed to do it. We have Corporal George Fisher, who is the most senior person in our department.
Ever.
And
Moses was my field training officer.
Right. So all of our podcasts have always had multiple guests on to speak about a particular topic. The only exception has been Colonel Cass.
Exactly.
And we decided, Daryl and I, that we wanted to highlight one of our employees or some of our employees, but we wanted to start with the senior most person who has the most experience, the senior most, and just going to have a general conversation.
And just to see how the department has grown over the umpteen years that George has been part of this police department. But again, I just been knowing George for a while. I mean, again, with my 30-some years of being with the police department, and I have seen him be in so many roles, has played so many roles throughout the police department. And so again, when we were traveling back from one of our recruiting trips, the one person came to our mind was George, and see if he will, accommodate us and come and talk to us about the past, as we did with the chief, as we did with the colonel, talked about 2021 to 2022. We want to talk to George about going to 1970 plus through where we are currently now, because he has seen it all. And so, George, you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm George Fisher. Started with Chesterfield Police Department January 1, 1978. I am wrapping up my 45th year with Chesterfield Police Department at the end of this year.
Wow. So it's 45 years here from 1978. However,
I was a
you
VCU.
had some previous law enforcement before you came to Chesterfield.
Wow.
I was a student at VCU, came from Western Pennsylvania straight to VCU for their highway safety program that they had just started with an interest in that area. 1974, I started as a dispatcher, working for the campus police department while still going to school full time. And then in October of 76, I became a sworn VCU officer.
Wow.
And worked until the end of 77 when I came out here to Chesterfield in 1978.
Wow. That is great. So you came from Western PA.
Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, home of the groundhog.
Home of the groundhog.
Yes, there is a groundhog that comes out of the ground, and I can tell you all kinds of stories about that thing.
And you've been here in Chesterfield Police Department since 78.
Since January 78.
Do you have any idea how long your academy was and how many officers were in the department when you first got here?
The officers, I can tell you real quick, it's 125 sworn officers total. That's chief to the bottom one, which was moi, being one of the rookies for that class. I was a member of the 2nd Basic Training Academy.
The 2nd Basic Training Academy.
And our academy was held in the classroom at Safety Town, which is still standing over in that little driving facility.
Right. Wow. So when you came with 125 officers, did you all work 24 hours a day, or did...
We ran 3 different shifts. It was day shift, evening shift, midnights. And you did 7 days on, started with midnights. You're went to evenings, went to days, off 4, and started the cycle all over again.
So y'all rotated cycles.
Correct.
To get everybody familiar with, good.
It was A, B, C, D shifts or platoons, however you want to. Back then we called it shifts, not platoons that would go through. And we were assigned a lieutenant and sergeants that we worked for, covered the entire county. There were nights on night shift and this is no joke, when we got real thin because maybe something happened or got sick, that we'd be down to 5 officers covering the entire county.
Wow. 440 square miles.
1 on 60, 1 on 360, 1 in the courthouse area, 1 on Route 1, and 1 in Ettrick-Matoka.
Wow.
That's how thin we got a couple of times.
Wow.
There were, if I remember correctly, 12 beats total. And that covered everything. I started off as a rookie, and you'd come on at midnight and go to meet the FTO. Well, I didn't know until we got on the radio, told us where you're working. So sometimes I meet my training officer at 360 West Shopping Center.
Wow.
Right.
And next thing I'm knowing, we're in Ettrick-Matoka.
Wow.
Copy a call and go down to Matoka and handle a call and go, I'm coming from 360 West.
Wow.
Wow.
Or I'm thinking I'm going to Matoka, so I ride down towards Matoka that night, getting prepped and being around King's Corner or something of that nature to make my FTO, and they say copy a call on Bon Air.
So that distance, like your initial
That's what I
360
was gonna ask.
Ettrick Wetumpka is like 30 miles,
Yeah.
35, 40 miles.
It's a good stretch.
Wow.
It's a good stretch. Now, did you have to supply equipment when you started, or was everything supplied for you?
No, we got the uniforms and gun belts. The shoes were ours. We had the coat, raincoat, hat. But beyond that, the nice little warm boots and things that we had was all was our own. We had to purchase.
You had to purchase that yourself.
Matter of fact, there weren't insulated black boots on the market. You could find brown, tan hunting boots, which don't wear them in uniform. Chief Pittman's going to have a little fit on you, and you're going to hear about it loud and clear.
Right.
But I used to run around my first couple of winters with the old military jump boots. Great for rain.
Oh, yes.
But your feet got cold because they weren't insulated.
Now, during your calls to service, did you find that people only call for major issues, or would they call for smaller things? Because in my 23 years, people will call because their neighbor is cutting grass too loud, or
Oh, we used to get all that stuff. You got
and then?
You got the barking dog.
Okay.
Right.
And we go out there and there's nobody around and say, Fido, shut up.
Yep.
Dog, you're making too much noise. Somebody wants to hear it.
Yep.
And there's nobody at the house. I don't know where they are, working, where, but dog's sitting there. Okay. Dog, please be quiet.
Wow.
Get back in the car. Dog's been advised of the law. Supposed to be quiet.
So the dispatchers and all still the same? I mean, getting you the calls and all? Because, again, you've seen that technology has changed for us. The radio, remember the big heart? Remember, we back in the days, we had the radio we didn't put in the car.
I can predate you before that.
Come on.
We did not have portable radios.
right.
There was one officer was assigned a portable radio who worked Cloverleaf Mall. And for my shift, normally that was Mike Tarantino. And he had something that was the size of a brick.
Yes.
Sometimes it worked getting out the mall. Sometimes it didn't, being that portable. But a road officer, no. I could go work a wreck like on Kuala Road when it would ice up and park your car at the top of the hill to keep people coming down. And I would literally put my radio on PA, could be down on the bottom,
to hear,
taking care of it. And they tell me like Collier's is coming or Vans is coming for whatever record service or Shackelford's. They would give us the information. You just kept right on working the call.
So you had an in-car radio to communicate, but once you got out of the car on domestic or
you're on your own.
You're on your own.
Yep, you're on your own.
Right.
Wow.
Matter of fact, one night, evening shift, I got over here in Courthouse Green and then stopping a guy. We get into an all-out brawl right in front of the apartment. His wife opens up the door and she's got a frying pan full of hot grease. And I said, this is getting ready to get real ugly real quick. She is chirping him. You ain't bringing this stuff to my house and all that. We end up going in the apartment. We're still fighting because he doesn't want to get arrested. And we're tussling and carrying on. At one point, and I tell everybody this, they don't believe it, it's just, we both got so wore out fighting with each other, we had to go to neutral corners to get our air. I look at the wife, I said, can I borrow your phone for a minute? She says, sure. So I pick up the phone, and I'm trying to be discreet, saying,
I need
hey,
help. Bring me somebody
the dispatcher answered the phone, and I'm trying to be discreet, saying, can you send me somebody out here? And Bubba Burgess was the officer coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Centralia Road with a prisoner.
Uh-huh.
And Bubba says, wait a minute, that's not normal phone conversation. So he gets up to Courthouse Green, finds the apartment, takes his prisoner, unhandcuffs him, sticks his hands through the window of his car, rehooks him through the window, says, don't you go nowhere, comes back in, and then the fight is back on again with this guy. We fought for him forever till we finally got him cuffed.
Wow.
Right.
So now let's go.
Up until then, I was on my own.
Wow. Let's go over through your history now. Talking about as a patrol officer, where did you go from there? Did you?
I was patrol. Went into safety and community support. Or back up. I started one of the original members of the crash team.
Okay.
So we were on call 24/7, whether you're day on, day off. When the phone rang, we're going somewhere. And back then, if there was a major crash, we were going to get it. And there was a handful of us that worked that. Fortunately, we didn't get calls every day.
Right.
But you knew when the phone rang, you were going to be busy and run from there. But it was in patrol. I got to stop and remember my timeline now. I'm starting to run a little blank on here.
45 years is a lot to think about.
Got into crime prevention.
Okay.
It was actually called safety and community support back then, which was part of the traffic unit that was coming through. Working a holiday schedule. And back then it was myself, Dave Hope was my sergeant, Lieutenant Marvin was the Lieutenant Marvin Starnes, and Captain Applewhite was the captain for us.
Okay.
We divvied up the holiday schedule. so no one person would be on call for the crashes. If it was a county vehicle crash with an injury or fatality, one of us went to that any time of the day or night.
Okay.
From the Safety and Community Support Unit. That's a Friday evening. Remember the date to this, December 20, 1985. I'm going down Route 10, and a lady beside me wiggles her car, and I said, "You're not going to hit me." So I slowed up. She loses control, spins her car out, ends up in the ditch. I turn around, come back, check her. She's okay, but the car's stuck. There's iced up roads everywhere. You get her out of her car. She's getting back into the car I'm driving. She's got one leg in, one arm in, vice. When we get hit and the rear bumper's put on the back end of the car, from the rear bumper to the rear window, and we're knocked out in the middle of Route 10. And I'm turning and going, oh, this is not good.
Wow.
Car sliding at me, finally stops. Go about the whole scene, get everybody up in there. I didn't realize I had been hurt. I went on the adrenaline dump, was getting everybody taken care of, and it wasn't until the ladder truck from Company 14, the old hook and ladder truck, was the first EMS vehicle could get to us. All the ambulances was tied up on calls. All the engines were tied up on calls.
Right.
Don Bowman steps off of the truck on the opposite side of Route 10 down here in 12,500 Iron Bridge Road, looks at me and says, "Don't go nowhere."
Wow.
And I'm going, wait a minute. I check my nose. I look in the mirror, ears, eyes, everything looks good. I said, "I'm okay." He says, "Don't go nowhere." I'd sat down in John Coffey's car because I gotten cold at that point. And when he came back to me to come up and step forward, I couldn't move forward.
Wow.
I'd messed up my back and neck. Recovered from that, the captain called me up after the holidays were over. He says, "Hey, can you come in the office and help Joyce answer the phone?" So I'd stumble into the office, help her with the phones, had a big bottle of Tylenol sitting in the desk, keep me going in there. And some time went by with that, and I said, "Captain Butter," and that's what his nickname was, Captain Butter. "When am I going back the road?" He said, "Oh, I ain't told you, man. You're permanent up here."
Oh, wow.
So that's when I got into the safety and community support, dealt with crime prevention. We started doing the officer-friendly programs, crime prevention, neighborhood, business speaking engagements, things of that nature.
Oh, okay.
Got the fortunate part was up there to go to the National Crime Prevention Institute in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yep.
Loved that program.
Yep.
Pitch it for everybody still if you can get there.
Yep, exactly.
Man, it's good knowledge you can gain out of that to run
Been
through.
there and done that one.
Yep.
Now, I know you've done crime prevention. You also did community policing, but you've also been an instructor at our academy. Do you still instruct now?
I still do. I was an EVOC instructor for 32 years.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I gained that while I was in the safety and community
Right.
support office, and I gave it up when I got into the property where I'm doing the police fleet vehicles now. I just don't have the time, and I didn't feel like, why should I be an instructor hanging on a roll and not teaching? So I gave
Right.
that up.
Okay.
Right.
But it was 32 years as an EVOC instructor, and yes, Daryl and y'all, I taught you how to get through the cone course.
Yes,
y'all
you
fussed
did.
at me.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And
Yes.
we did the EVOC at Fort
Yep.
Pickett and had the fun.
Did
Got
you
into
teach
community police.
policing as well?
I don't teach community policing. I go into a number of the other programs. But I was leaving like Dave Suda and some of the other ones we
Right.
wanted to teach.
Right.
And if they had the niche, I said, why am I stealing that? I let
Right.
them run with it.
Right.
Got into community policing, did that for 24 years. Captain Driscoll was the captain I worked for when I first came out here in the county, and he called me in one day, says, "Come into my office, I want to talk to you." And of course, the way it started was 5 to 114, come to my office. And I'm going, oh, I'm in trouble. I done it now. I don't know what I did, but I walk in, Captain, what I do wrong? He said, "Just sit down." And he's just chatting like we were Billy and George.
Sure,
He
sure.
started pitching the community policing program to me, and I worked directly for him for several years.
Wow.
Till the program kept growing and the responsibilities were growing. And then he says, nothing here, but I need supervision, that you need supervision. And then it spun down to where I'd have a sergeant and lieutenant to work for. But I handled Jeff Davis Highway.
Right.
And the other good part, which I like, and it had been this way for many, many, many of the administrations, if there was a problem somewhere else in the county,
Right.
they'd call me and say,
Yeah,
hey, no, it's not
exactly.
Jeff Davis.
Exactly.
Can you go help this? Can you go
Yep.
resolve this? Can you
Yep.
go do what's
Right.
going
Yep.
on into
Yep.
there?
I know when I went into the community policing unit, you were already in the unit. And I was all the way up on Midlothian. You were all the way down on Jeff Davis, but you always served as a valuable resource to us.
Right.
Whether or not we had the homeless count that we do every January or July,
The summer and winter count.
or some type of code violation that I knew was a violation, but I couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Or who
Right.
could I reach out to? You're a wealth of knowledge. I remember one of the most controversial things is when you all got cell phones. Oh my gosh.
That big bag
Everybody
phone.
had
a bag phone.
Yeah, George had like one of the first bag phones issued
Yeah.
in the department, and he was an officer, but we had supervisors who didn't have microphones. One of our board members at the time, I think, helped you achieve that.
Wow.
And so she could call, or they could call
me direct.
and call him direct. Hey,
Yeah.
we have this problem going on. Can you get it resolved? Sure.
And that migrated as time went by. Everything had to go through command.
Right.
And then as things were coming along, it got to the point the board members would call me direct.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I would get different ones, whether
Yes.
it was Harry Daniels or Dorothy Jekyll or
Right.
whoever was on the board had an issue. And it could be the school board issues. It could
Right.
be department directors in the county, drainage and engineering. I mean, the different areas, not just the board of supervisors or county administration.
Right.
We would do the things down at VSU.
Right.
And they loved it because I knew who all the special folks were that were
Right.
coming in. They
Right.
have that little
Right.
parking pass and
Wow.
to get in there, and the senators and the delegates and the other folks off Capitol Hill. Just
Wow.
work on through what needed to go.
Right.
Well, let me
right.
ask. I know you've been here a long time. Why did you stay?
Good question.
enjoy-
Because retention is a big thing for us. Why did you stay?
When I first looked here, I looked at 3 organizations. Chesterfield was one because I came from Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in Western Punxsutawney, Jefferson County, the coal fields.
And 2 others.
Virginia State Police and Pennsylvania State Police. My dad worked for the Liquor Control Board in Pennsylvania. At the
Okay.
time, he was responsible for 1/4 of the state out of the Pittsburgh office. That was his territory.
Okay.
Had been accepted to the Pennsylvania State Police Academy, and I turned him down because of politics.
Right.
And what I didn't like is you
Wow.
couldn't have roots for where you were. If you wanted to advance in your career, you were moving wherever
Right.
you
Exactly.
were.
Exactly.
And that was the same problem with the state police. I was looking for Virginia State
Yep.
Police to come through there. Plus, for state police, because I had been at VCU, the Richmond area, I would have been displaced for a minimum
In
of 5 years
at another place.
Northern Virginia,
That's right.
Virginia Beach.
I went through that
Southwest
same. I went through
Virginia.
the same thing. Yep.
Didn't
Same thing.
matter where you were.
Yep.
Didn't matter. I have no family here.
Yep.
What they were trying to do was, if you came from, say, Henrico, Richmond, Chesterfield,
To get
that
you
would
out of
take
that
care of
area.
your buddies.
Exactly. Get you out of that area so you won't take care of your buddies.
So I said, nope, I'm not doing that.
Wow.
I came out to the Chesterfield, knew about the county. When I went through my basic academy, it was a regional. So I was
Right.
a VCU officer, having my classroom in the safety town as a VCU officer, sworn in as a VCU officer, graduated in the summer of 77.
Okay.
And then Lieutenant Pete Johnson was the training lieutenant, says, if you're serious, because there were 2 of us looking serious, come out here, myself and Jeff Pickey, to be Chesterfield officers. If you wanted, you had to have your paperwork in, and that was in the summer.
Right.
I didn't get the phone call, or back to the phone call, the letter back then. 2 weeks before the first of the year,
Wow.
here's your 2-week notice time. Let the chief know that you're leaving VCU. Although they knew and they encouraged
Sure.
it.
Sure.
VCU looked at it's a campus environment.
Right.
And Chief Taylor was the chief I was working for. He said, I see this as a stepping stone for you. I do not see you as a career officer
Oh
in a
wow.
campus
And that's the
police
chief
environment.
at VCU telling you this.
Yes.
Wow. That's awesome.
Chief Taylor.
Good for you. Good for you.
Because we were more security than police at that time, which they have since grown tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And have
Oh,
taken
yeah.
on a lot of responsibility, a lot of training, and have come a long, long way.
Yes.
Matter of
They
fact, the captain that I work for, Dan Dean, I just attended his memorial this week in Mechanicsville Turnpike, where he'd passed away.
Wow.
They were all looking at things. He started the bike program for
Right.
VCU. The
Right.
bike program we'd started out here in the county. They were mirroring that
Wow.
to come through.
And so you chose to stay because you enjoyed it. What recommendations would you have to young people or anyone interested in working in our department? In
First one
policing?
is you've got to have it in your blood.
Yeah.
You
Right.
can't just come out here and say, hey, I'm going to be a cop.
Right.
And I've seen many folks come in here. Can I tell you who that person's going to be, the magic one, when you're trying to do recruiting? I don't have that crystal ball that I can shake it.
Sure.
Right.
I was
Sure.
an FTO for many, many, many years.
Right.
And you would see some of them come through and you pick up and say, this is going to work real well. And you got some other ones you're going, this ain't going to cut it at all.
Right.
And I'm not going
Right.
to give any names, but some have heard the story I give out. As I have one lieutenant called me in one night and says, hey, this recruit's been cycled through several people. Don't speak to a single person. Take them out here working evening shift and give me a daily review. Written, and I want verbal.
Wow.
So we made a traffic stop, and I told him, I said, hey, you can't see over here by the driver's door, but there's a big mud puddle, and you can stay back of the B pillar for safety, and you're not having to get up 2 folks. But if you get in that mud puddle, you're right in the middle of the door, and you're in a danger zone.
Right.
Well, I took the right corner. He goes up, goes to the driver's door, and I'm watching, and everything gets calm. So I'm going, okay, we're good to roll here. He's standing in ankle-deep water, even though I
Wow.
cautioned him.
Wow.
Just no
Yep.
common sense coming through.
Yep. Couldn't put it together.
And when I took that back to the lieutenant and shared with him, he says that's what everybody was trying to say, but they couldn't find the actual fine tuning
Sure.
for where he was coming through.
Right.
We kept trying to work with him, and he finally said, it's just not the job for
Right,
me.
exactly.
Thought it was.
Right.
Tried to express the interest, tried to go, didn't hit.
Right.
So before we wrap up,
Right.
This has been a long career for you, and we know that people deal with stress and stuff. Is there anybody that you'd like to shout out that's been supportive or led to your success in being able to work this number of years?
My wife.
Your wife. That's
Yep.
wonderful.
She has been my backbone for many, many years. If I don't.
I know we get emotional, but I've met your wife.
Yeah,
she's
you go
She's a wonderful woman, and I know 45 years of this is a long time.
She used to, when I would come in after the crash team call, were the ones, and the hardest ones were the kids.
Yeah.
Dealing
Yes.
with child fatality. Because I would come in and I would check the kids. That was
Right.
just, I'd walk in and say, okay, you're there, we're here, okay. Unfortunately, somebody else lost their child that day or that
Yep.
evening,
Right.
which would just tug at your heartstrings.
Sure.
Yeah.
But no, Dee has been my rock of everything that's going on. Rich's service, where we just did up in Buffalo, New York.
Right.
When I walked through the door, of course, about 8:30 that morning, I got the notification, and I'm going, y'all are kidding me, until I found out it was dead serious. And
Right.
Right.
I went home to see her about 10:30 that morning and said, didn't say anything, I just walked through the door, and she goes, what's
Knew
wrong?
it. She knew it. Yeah.
Right.
I said, what do you mean? She says,
You don't have
she's
that
reading,
look.
I'm
that
reading,
look.
I'm reading your
Yes,
face.
sir. Yep.
I'm reading your face. And
Yep.
Yeah.
She was the rock of Gibraltar for there. I want to thank her support. I want to thank her support, and the other part is helping the other wives.
Yeah.
Because they talk, they network, they continue to go. And that is so critical, because
Right.
some of these young wives don't have
Yeah.
the extra support out there
Yeah.
that is so needed.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
My wife has got the courage from heck, I could say.
Thank you
She
for
gonna
that.
speak her mind, and Colonel Katz knows it real well. Matter of fact, when we were dealing with Richie's part coming
Right.
up through, she turns around and calls him, or she texted him first and said, "I will be supporting George in Buffalo."
Right.
AKA the verbiage, which hadn't come out yet officially, is I'm riding with him to Buffalo and back.
Right.
And it wasn't just about an hour or so later when
Right.
the colonel said spouses can ride
Right,
all the way up,
right,
which is
right.
great. We didn't have that before.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We've had a couple other line of duties,
Sure,
and it was very
sure.
sterile.
Yep. Yep.
And I
Not acknowledged properly like
hated
it is
that
now.
part.
Yeah.
Right.
hated that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we tried to help the family and everything else that was coming
Sure.
through, but it was just too stiff, too starched.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
I know one of the things that has not come up on the podcast so far is that you are also a member of the Honor Guard
Yes, sir.
that travels up and down the East Coast.
And
to
you don't
support families
know
and
how I
other
got
law
in there.
enforcement Organizations.
You don't know how I got in there.
No idea.
Was attending.
I don't even know if you applied on a computer when you came here. If you had a one-page paper application.
Hold up.
My honor guard was
good
not
enough.
paper. Was not
Exactly.
paper. Was not paper. Bob Lopez had passed away, who we'd worked with on the road.
Yes.
Yep.
He had a good retirement, and then
Yep.
we lost him quickly. Just unexpected. on one
Unexpected.
day.
Yep.
We're overdoing his service, Dale Memorial. Marquette Robinson was coming out with Rusty Lescott to fold the flag for the service. And Marquette's working the road that day. Unfortunately, catches a DUID mother with children, and he's having to process that and
Right.
couldn't get to the
Wow.
service. And Rusty Lescott looks at me and goes,
You it.
"Hey, you folded the flag before, haven't you?" And I'm
Hey.
going, back in my Boy Scout days.
Right.
But I wasn't going to touch it then because I wasn't going to make a fool of myself.
Sure.
I didn't want to embarrass myself, disrespect Bob or anybody else. But when we were done, I went to Rusty, who was the leader as the lieutenant. I said, "I want to be on the honor guard." He goes,
Wow.
"Okay." And when the next opening came
Sure.
up, bingo.
You were
And
on
you're
honor.
right. We have traveled all over the place. Katie down in Norfolk, her death that night is another one. Still tugs at my heart.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
A very good officer, young, eager,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah. Ready to serve.
Ready. Yeah, she
Ready to
was
serve.
set to go, and unfortunately died way too early.
Yep.
We went up to Massachusetts. Ironically, when I travel, I book my own hotel room.
Yep.
Because I want a decent hotel. I want to find where. The other one being, I didn't get this belly from nothing. I like to eat a little bit. But we were at a Holiday Inn across the street with the Cracker Barrel.
Yes.
We get up that morning for the service, go across the street to the Cracker Barrel. Wilson rode with me. And we're in there eating breakfast, the first two people in the restaurant. And we're talking, and the manager comes up and talks to me. He said, "You're here? You're here for Katie?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, it's obvious you're in uniform, but I gave her job." here in this restaurant.
Wow.
Before she relocated down to Virginia Beach.
Wow.
And she went into Navy
Sure.
and came out of active duty and went into Norfolk. And that just
Wow.
tugs at my heartstrings.
But that's the beauty of it, man. That's the beauty of it. Well,
But I want to conclude and recognize a couple of things. It's the Jeff Davis group.
Yes.
Very instrumental because I wish I'd taken a videotape of Jeff Davis corridor before I got into community policing.
Right.
Where it is today.
It's amazing the
Yeah.
change.
The governor came out with money to support and run that up through the Amp Hill group, Bensley, Bellwood Elementary, Bensley Elementary. All of them have been great teams to work with. But just the improvements on Route 1.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
hoping
Yes.
to meet maybe $100 million, $200 million. Last figure I heard was over $1 billion with a B investments and improvements on
Wow.
Jeff Davis, and it
Yes.
continues to go this day.
Wow.
We're getting ready to open St. Francis Emergency Room.
yep.
The improvement with the Jane Apartments. I mean, there's a lot of things that have come along.
Wow.
But there's a lot of folks on the corridor, as we're allowed to call it.
Yeah.
Not the Pike, because
Yeah.
that was politically incorrect, and now it's Route 1.
Right.
Right.
But they were a lot of good folks that we could deal with, and good citizens, residents, and merchants, school administrators, students.
Yep.
'Cause
Right.
I
Yep.
could go into schools, and I had to run of the school.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but again, we talk about that community partnership, and what better ambassador of that than you, sir?
And that was the one, Captain Driscoll, when he called me in, he says, there is no interview process for this
Right.
job.
Yep.
I said, what do you mean, sir? He said, I asked back then the lieutenants and captains, everybody wore a white shirt.
Yep.
I asked every white shirt to give me a name as to who to be in community policing.
Yep.
And all of them gave me your name except for one, and that one had been in investigation so long, he said, I don't know the street.
Right.
Right.
And
Wow.
when I asked him, I said, why? He said, because you would stop at this store,
Oh, yeah.
or you would go
Oh, yeah.
here,
Oh, yeah.
or to get a drink, get a candy bar, be around the bus stops,
Yep.
the schools. He says, you're doing I did it long before what community policing was ever thought of.
Exactly.
Being with the merchants and the residents and the neighbors and the businesses.
Well, I told Elliott when we were traveling, I said, this is going to be a good one.
Yes.
Just to hear the
absolutely.
history and learn about the person that really cares about the community. And George, you have shown that, I mean, year after year after year. So I'm not as seasoned as you.
I'm setting the benchmark for you.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
How many years you got now?
33.
So you got to put 12 more on to
I
catch
got to
my
put
benchmark.
12 more on. But I really appreciate that you have seen the longevity of a person that has seen it all, and you still standing and doing the right thing, serving the
Yes.
community. So I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
You know, I want to thank you for coming in and allowing us to have this format with you today. I know you're a very humble guy. You don't get acknowledged for all the stuff that you've done. I know you were instrumental in helping me in community policing, and I think to those who give, we should also give back and take time to acknowledge it.
Right.
Well, thank you.
We want to thank you and thank your wife for being supportive as
Yes,
well. I mean,
exactly.
We talk a lot about
Awesome.
I
mental
couldn't-
health, well-being, and our quality of life, but we know what it takes outside of the work. Plus,
I
45
couldn't be
years.
where I was if it wasn't
No
for Dean.
question. No way. Well, partner, I mean,
Another good one.
dude, this is great.
Another good
I
one,
mean,
yes.
George, we thank you. I mean, I know whatever fear you may have of saying, I got to go ahead and talk to these two guys, and what do I talk about? You have done an excellent job.
Right.
Excellent job.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate it. We also want to take time to acknowledge our sound engineers and our
Also.
AV staff here today,
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
Rizzuti
Oh, yeah.
and Lena
Do they
Shaduli.
really work, though? Do they
And they
really?
put it in. I don't know how to run all these wires.
I mean, they make me look good
They do
or
a
sound
great-
good.
they do a great
They do a
job.
wonderful job. Love them to
We
death.
want to remind our listeners that we are still taking applications for our police officers positions. We also have emergency communications is hiring a police service aide, as well as civilian positions. You can find those positions on our social media platforms or by going to joinccpd.org. Check us out.
Go
Let us know
ahead,
if you have
young
a question, and we will get you started in that process.
And we'll
And we'll
thank
catch
you
you
all.
on the next expo. Thank
Yep.
you.